Weekly power rankings, I think week 15. Let's go ahead and see Colin Cowherd's herd hierarchy. Then we'll compare to my top 10. Now, I released my top 10 on Tuesday. We'll go ahead and take a look at it now. So this does not take into account Frisco versus Seattle yesterday. I'm recording this video on a Friday. So to note here, really the main things to note, the big movers and shakers are Detroit at 7, Miami at 8, and Minnesota at 10. Now, Minnesota and Miami have a legitimate chance to fall out of the top 10. Minnesota's already kind of locked up the playoff situation. Miami could miss the playoffs, which is crazy to think about since we had them at about 3 a couple weeks ago. The rest is still kind of the same. Cincinnati, huge mover up. They're just getting better and better. To me, they're really they're separating themselves from like Buffalo and Miami and whoever else in the AFC. Is basically KC and Cincinnati. I think they're on a crash course of the AFC Championship game. They've separated themselves the same way that I think Philadelphia and Frisco have separated themselves in the NFC. We'll talk about this more with Colin whenever he brings up these teams, but I definitely want to talk about Miami, Minnesota, and Detroit. So let's go ahead and get into Colin's herd hierarchy and see where they match up with Mike.
These are, I believe, this morning, the 10 best teams in the NFL. Here we go.
Herd hierarchy.
Time is now. Let's go.
The top 10 NFL teams according to Colin.
Much to the
Number
chagrin,
10.
much to the chagrin of McIntyre, barely New England.
Okay, I mean, they're fringe. They are a fringe team there. I don't think they're deserved of 10. They're probably like 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there. They're in that combination. I'm interested to see who he knocks out. Maybe Detroit. Maybe he doesn't have Detroit in there. So, I mean, New England is, I think that the Bailey Zappi thing was way overblown. I think they're better with Mac Jones. As Mac Jones progresses and grows, they kind of progress and grow. I think they're pretty similar to Jacksonville. They're a team where if you get good Trevor Lawrence, you're probably going to win. If you get good Mac Jones, you're probably going to win. They're good, obviously very well coached. Their defense looks really good. Matthew Judon kind of dominated that Arizona game. He could lead the league in sacks. New England's kind of getting back to that old school. They're led entirely by their defense, and if they can smother an offense, granted, this offense that they smothered was against Colt McCoy, but if they can control the game and not get into a shootout, then I think New England is a average to above average team.
Best coach in the NFL. They've scored 92 points.
I don't know if Belichick's the best coach in the NFL anymore. I think he's the greatest coach of all time. But is he the best coach right now in the NFL? I would probably say no.
Off turnovers, leads the NFL. They're all banged up. So that's not their best. That's why they threw so much behind the line of scrimmage. And here's my thing. They're still very good situationally. And I will say it again. I was impressed with Mac Jones last night. He's got nothing to work with. And I think this kid, we can sit and bang on him, but I watched him last night, and I'm like, he's got a defensive coordinator calling plays. He's barking. He's showing.
That's another thing, too. He mentioned, blank is why they're throwing so much short stuff and why their offense looks the way it does. I don't think that's the case. I think the offense looks the way it does because Matt Patricia's calling plays. I mean, Matt Patricia, 15 weeks into the season, he is a negative to the Patriot offense.
Leadership. New England at 10.
Number 9.
The Vikings. I like the Vikings, but there's limitations. First team in league hit.
Okay, so I have them at 10. The Vikings are historically kind of unbalanced, where their record is 10-3, but I think they're only they've only outscored their points allowed to points forced by like 10 points. They should not be 10-3. They probably shouldn't even be 500. I've seen a lot of detailed analytics that show that the Vikings should be like 3-10. They should be in the battle for the first pick in the draft, not the 1 seed. With that being said, I think that whenever you have a team like the Vikings who all this stuff shows like, hey, they shouldn't have this record, part of you has to say, yeah, well, they do have the record. It's kind of funny because you always hear about quarterbacks who it's like, Taylor Heineke is a winner. He's just a winner. He just finds a way to win. Even though we know he's not that good, even though we know that he doesn't have the physical capabilities to be that good, you hear people say things like he's got intangibles or he's just a winner. He finds a way to win. You never hear that about teams, right? You could say that about Minnesota. You could say Minnesota just finds a way to win. They should have lost all these games. They have something about them. I don't know what it is, but they find a way to win. They still have good players. Like, they still have good skill position players. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins is whatever you think Kirk Cousins is. But Minnesota is weird for me because I absolutely recognize that they should not be 10-3. I absolutely recognize they shouldn't be the 2 seed in the NFC. I do not think they're a Super Bowl contender. I've said that literally all year right here on these power rankings. With that being said, I think they're a little overblown with this whole like worst 10-3 team of all time. They remind me of like the Tennessee Titan teams of old with Kerry Collins and Chris Johnson whenever they were like 12-4 or something. And everyone knew like, this is kind of a weird 12-4 team. Were the Tennessee Titans of last year, were they the true 1 seed? Probably not. This happens every year where a team overachieves. The Vikings are overachieving. I think people are kind of overreacting to that overachievement. Put it on a t-shirt.
History to win 10 of its first 13 with a negative point differential. They've got a very low ceiling, but they're very capable. They're 9-0 in one-possession games. Credit to Kirk Cousins and the coach. Justin Jefferson is a game changer. They went to Buffalo and won. He can literally win you a game on a road, and there are not many guys like this. A Tyreek Hill, a Justin Jefferson, a Jamar Chase, where they can just, we know quarterbacks. We know Mahomes can do it. He's one of the only non-quarterbacks. You can go on the road, good team, and he just takes the game over. Minnesota 9.
Number 8.
Listen, I'm going to put the Dolphins in there.
Nailed this one. So here's the thing with Miami. They have a tough stretch here because they could miss the playoffs. Like, that's the crazy thing about this, is that Miami could miss the playoffs. Now, they are in the middle or at the end of a hellacious stretch. 3 road games, 2 in California, 1 in Buffalo. It's about to be bad weather. Tua hasn't been great. And I'll tell you this. This is some more deep analytics. The analytics are showing that for some reason Miami is stretching their air yards. So on like first down, second down, whatever, when Tua's throwing, his depth of throw is like 12 yards per throw. When they were doing really well, his depth of throw was like 7 to 8 yards. Now, you may say, why? Why would they change that? Why would they change the depth? I don't think they are changing it. I think the defenses are changing it. So we saw this a couple weeks ago, and we saw it last week, where the defense, the cornerbacks, I'm going to watch a lot of World Cup, call them center backs, the cornerbacks are jamming these receivers at the line. So it's taking them longer to get freed up. So Tua is having to hold on to the ball a little bit longer. He's having to push the ball downfield a little bit. That's why the offense is being interrupted. Okay? So the defenses have adjusted to Miami. Now we will see. Now we will see Mike McDaniel. Now we will see Tua. Can they adjust to the adjustment? This week, again, it's probably going to be snowing. It's probably going to be windy. It's freezing. This week is not going to be a great week to say, like, all right, let's see if they can adjust. But that's something to pay attention to moving forward with Miami, is see if they are getting jammed at the line, see if Tua is having to push the ball downfield a little bit longer, and if they can't adjust to that, Miami's going to miss the playoffs. I'll tell you that right now.
They're going through a bad stretch. They're struggling in protection. There's a ton of injuries with this team. I did not bail on the Niners earlier this year when they had 7 starters out. I'm not bailing on the Dolphins. They'll score. They'll make the playoffs. They'll sneak in. They will sneak in. I still have so much respect for their receiving core.
We will see about the playoffs because I think their last game of the year is against the Jets. And if Zach Wilson's the starting quarterback for the Jets, whatever. But if Mike White would have not got hurt, I don't know. I don't know if right now they're better suited for the playoffs, however you want to say it. I don't know if they're that much better than a Mike White-led Jets.
Their left tackle, their head coach. This is a team. They're not going to beat a top team in the league, but they could get into a shootout with teams if they have protection. Absolutely could get into a shootout with a Cincinnati and Buffalo. Hopefully not in a snowstorm, but I put them at 8.
Number 7.
Say what you will about the Ravens, and they drive.
The protection thing is wrong, by the way. The protection thing has to do with what I'm talking about. It's nothing to do with the protection. It's the fact that Tua has to hold the ball on longer. If you hold on to the ball longer, obviously you need your protection to hold up longer, right? And it gives more time for the defensive line to get after you. If they could run their offense how they wanted to, if they could free up the wide receivers quicker, it wouldn't matter about the protection. So Colin's directionally right. He just doesn't know the deep analytics of the game like I do.
Drive me nuts. Have you looked at...
All right, so I have the Ravens at 9, and that's because of Lamar Jackson. If Lamar Jackson was on the Ravens and playing, and I knew he was healthy, and I wasn't concerned about who's playing quarterback, I'd probably have them higher. Right now, if I had to pick a Super Bowl team out of Miami and Baltimore, I'd probably pick Baltimore if I knew Lamar Jackson was going to be healthy. I don't know how healthy he's going to be, so I had to have them at 9. But Baltimore is good.
At their defense since week 9. It's like 1, 2, or 3 in the league on everything. Yes, they're struggling offensively. But since Roquan Smith got there, 23 takeaways this year, only the Eagles have more. They're going to be in every single football game.
Yeah,
true. They're just going to be in every game.
They are.
And so to me, you're a top 6, 7 team in the league. If you're in every game, Lamar will eventually get healthy, so they'll be more dynamic offensively. Ravens at 7.
No problem
Number
with that.
6.
The Cowboys are at 6. They tend to be...
So I think I have them at 5. I think I have them at 5. Dallas is sweet. All right, I like Dallas a lot. I actually thought about picking up a Super Bowl ticket on Dallas because y'all know I had the San Francisco one, but with Brock Purdy, I'm a little concerned. Dallas is good. Dallas has to win in a specific way. I think Dallas is kind of like New England, where they need to be controlling the game. They need to be dominating defensively, just like New England. If Judon is sacking the quarterback 2-3 times a game and pressuring, they're going to win. If Micah Parsons is allowed to dominate, they're probably going to win. Now, what happens whenever Dallas's defense falters? I'll tell you what happens. Go watch the Green Bay game. That's what happens. They blow a 14-point lead in the second half. Dallas has problems, right? Their problems are Kellen Moore, Mike McCarthy. Their problems are the same problems they've always had. Ezekiel Elliott, and how good is Dak, right? They're a piece away, wide receiver-wise, tight end-wise, something like that. They're a skill position away, and they're Tony Pollard getting 90% of the touches away from being a really good offense. They have a really good defense, but it has to show up every single week. Can Dallas get to an NFC Championship game? Sure. Can they get to a Super Bowl? They got to prove it to me first. In my lifetime, for 30 years, or damn near close to it, since I've been watching football for sure, so we'll call it since 2000, Dallas have been choke artists. Dallas has been a team that's supposed to be good every year and can't get over that hump. So we need to see them do it before I can say that they're the Cowboys of old.
They're great when they're playing downhill. The less they rely on Dak, the better. Back-to-back years with 10-plus wins. McCarthy may not be Andy Reid, but he's clearly capable.
He's not.
400-plus yards.
He's not. McCarthy's not. See, capable is not what Mike McCarthy is. Mike McCarthy is like, hey, look, if the team wins, if y'all win, and y'all make this easy for me, I can stand here on the sidelines. But the second he's got to start making decisions, the second he's got to get involved, the second he's got to manage, it's over. He's not capable of doing that whatsoever. Holding a clipboard, watching a screen, capable of doing that, no doubt about it. But once the going gets tough, he's cooked.
In 5 of 6 games, Tony Pollard has emerged as a home run hitter. The key with Dallas is very simple. You got to ask Dak to throw fewer than 35 times. I think we had the stat yesterday. When Mahomes throws 35 times or more, Kansas City...
Yeah, but that's directionally right. But why would Dak have to throw less than 35 times? Would anyone in the class like to tell me the game script? We do this every week. Y'all should be good at this. What is the game script of the game if Dak is throwing less than 35 times? The game script of the game would mean that Dallas is probably ahead. The game script of the game would mean that Dallas is probably running the football well. They're controlling the clock. They're ahead in the game. They're dictating the pace. If they can do all those things, like I said 2 minutes ago, then they're going to win. But once they lose that control over the game, once they have to chase a team, once their defense isn't holding up, because all those things have to happen for that to be true, right? The only way they're chasing a team is if their defense is not holding up. Then they aren't the same team. So yes, Colin's directionally right, but it's not just about Dak's throwing. It's about the script of the game around him.
He's 43-15. When Dallas does it, they lose 2 out of 3. There's a way they have to play to win, but they do it often. They're at 6.
Number 5.
Buffalo.
Okay.
Listen, Josh Allen didn't play for.
Well, here's the deal with Buffalo. Again, I've said this a lot this year. Seems like they haven't been good in a while. When was the last time Josh Allen was good? When was the last time Buffalo was dominant? This team was supposed to be the best team we've ever seen. And bottom line is they just haven't been. The Jets, they win by 8. You know, like they just, even when they dominate, they don't dominate. We'll see what happens with Miami this week, but I have to see Josh Allen be MVP Josh Allen. I have to see Buffalo be this good before I can think they're that good of a team. I mean, they're just not. Right now, they're getting away with this idea that they're really, really good. But I will give them this. This is like the reverse Vikings. Buffalo is not playing well. They're not playing at the highest level, or they're not playing anywhere near where we thought they would be, right? And they're 10-3. They should be 11-2 with an insane loss to Minnesota, fumbled, kneel down, or whatever. So the fact that they can be kind of average to their standards and be 10-3 or 11-2 is pretty wild. So I do give them credit for that. But right now, I don't think they're anywhere near Cincinnati and Kansas City.
Particularly well, and they still won. Now, part of that's the Jets' defense. But Von Miller's injury, I think, takes him out of the top 3.
That hurts.
Cole Beasley, I'm not sure what that's all about.
Nothing.
They've held opponents to 1 touchdown in back-to-back weeks. But I do think Von Miller was brought in for a reason, and he is gone. They do also tend to bail on the running game faster than I like. Right now, they have a knockout punch.
They do not have a running game.
But to be a heavyweight champ, do they have a jab? Kansas City's got both. Cincinnati's got both. San Francisco's got both. Got to be more than a knockout specialist. Buffalo at 5.
Number 4.
The Niners at 4. I'd probably have them.
Okay, I mean, I'm fine with that. I have them at 3. I think, obviously, I have the Super Bowl ticket on San Francisco. I love this San Francisco team. But, man, they are just dragging me through hell. I mean, we're on to a third-string quarterback. Deebo Samuel's hurt. I mean, how much more can this team go through? If this team was fully healthy, they'd be so far and away the best team in the NFL. It makes me sick. The fact that they still are dominating, and I don't want to talk about the Seattle game because I want to do this properly. So we're not going to talk about anything about Seattle. Brock Purdy so far is playing really, really well. All right, against Tampa, he looked real good. Their defense is like we talk about Dallas having a good defense. San Francisco has a generational good defense. They have a Baltimore Ravens 2000 defense. They have the 85 Bears. They have whatever defense you want to throw out there. They are that good. If Brock Purdy can just be average to above average and not turn the ball over, and Deebo Samuel can get back on the field, I believe this team can go to the Super Bowl. And if they go to the Super Bowl, you got to look at the Niners and be like, man, they've been to that they should have gone to 3 straight if they go this year because they should have went last year. This team is underrated with how consistent they've been with so many things happening, with injuries all over the place and moving pieces and all that stuff. Out of all, like I was thinking about this the other day because people are kind of down on the Niners because of the Brock Purdy thing. How many quarterbacks do you think that if they were on the Niners, how many quarterbacks do you think the media would be like, oh yeah, the Niners are Super Bowl favorites? Like Mac Jones. If Mac Jones was on the Niners, do you think people would how much higher do you think people would have them rated? If Bailey Zappi, if Cooper Rush, because we had to sit here this year and listen to how good Cooper Rush was. We had to sit here this year and listen to how good Bailey Zappi is. Are any of those players better than Brock Purdy? I don't think so. So if you put them, just name value, if you put them, I've heard people say Jordan Love is good. Jordan Love sucks. If you put any of those players, Kenny Pickett, like Ryan Tannehill, like all these players I think are right at Brock Purdy. Right at Brock Purdy. But because Brock Purdy's a rookie, because he's Mr. Irrelevant, they're not giving San Francisco any due, but San Francisco is just this juggernaut offense, this juggernaut system where I don't think Purdy has to be that great. I do think there is obviously limitations to saying, hey, this is the best team in the NFL with a rookie quarterback. Totally understandable. 100%. But I think that Frisco might be actually underrated with how dominant they've been in the 6-game winning streak. Because remember, we're not counting Seattle yet. In the 6-game winning streak. What a team. What a job Kyle Shanahan has done. I think a different video for a different day, but I think Kyle Shanahan is probably the best coach in the NFL right now.
Spot higher, but Brock Purdy, I don't know in the postseason. They've outscored their opponent since Brock Purdy took over 65-10. They've outgained their opponent in 12 of 13 games. I believe this is the best roster in football. Even their offensive players are physical. They do have a lower ceiling at quarterback, but they're the only team in the NFL. This is an interesting stat. The only team to have more interceptions, 14, than touchdown passes allowed, 11. That's
nuts.
A handful defensively.
They're so good.
San Francisco at 4.
Number 3.
I love that team.
Kansas City worked them in the second.
Okay, so he's got Cincinnati higher than Kansas City, obviously. But KC is super good. I think KC, right now, if I had to bet, I would say it's going to be Kansas City and San Francisco in the Super Bowl. Kansas City, so good, so impressed with them. Patrick Mahomes is the MVP. Andy Reid is one of my favorite coaches ever. If I'm not going with Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid's the best coach in the NFL. The fact that Kansas City is doing what they're doing without Tyreek Hill is just incredible. You don't want to see them. There's not much else you can say. I mean, there's really not that much else you can say. They're just leaps and bounds better than everyone else, that they would have to worry about besides Cincinnati, who I'm sure about to talk about next. But yeah, I can pretty much just copy and paste this part of the video and do it every single week until the playoffs, because it's not going to change. KC is just they're just a well-oiled machine.
Half in the Bay Area. I don't take much of the Denver game. They led 27-0. What are you going to do? You're going to go into a locker room, you're going to tell a team, hey, this game's in doubt. I don't care much.
So I've said this, and I hope you remember this. It is almost virtually useless to take whenever a team is down a lot and then comes back to lose by a little. So like the Broncos, they were down 27-0, came back to lose by 8 or whatever it was. That looks good. That looks good to the casual fan, looks good in the box score. But that, you can almost completely write that off. You can almost completely write it off, right? I give nothing to those situations. Absolutely nothing to those situations whenever that happens. So the Denver game, to me, means nothing. If you go up by 30 and then win, who gives a shit? Doesn't matter. It was just a dominant of an effort, no matter what the final score looks like, unless you lose, obviously. So I agree with Colin. I don't put any stock into that at all.
Much about that. Number 1 total offense in the league. Mahomes leads the NFL in passing yards. They do, I think, sometimes miss the explosiveness and the urgency that Tyreek Hill could get.
Agreed. Agreed.
This is still the most lethal offense, the most clever offense, the most coachable star quarterback.
Their offense kind of runs like the Patriots offense did whenever they had like Wes Welker or these like kind of not explosive wide receivers. They're very methodical. They're a very different offense, which goes to show how good Patrick Mahomes is, that he can basically have a completely different offense this year, but he arguably have his best year ever. That's so impressive to me. But I do agree with that. They do lack that super explosive Kansas City that we used to see, that very explosive, like can just absolutely score at any minute. They aren't so much that, but they've kind of grown into this new role.
Back in the league, I've got them at 3.
Number 2.
But I do think situationally, Cincinnati's a little better, and I'm going to have the Bengals, who have won 7 of 8.
So I don't have a huge problem with this. I think Cincy and KC are right there. I think they're 1A and 1B in the AFC. It really just it's. I think Zach Taylor is a huge downgrade compared to like Andy Reid. But if you think Joe Burrow is truly, one of a kind, or the best quarterback in the NFL, or the best quarterback in the AFC, or the MVP, or the guy you would want in a 2-minute drill, if you believe that, then I can certainly see you putting Cincinnati over Kansas City. I still think Patrick Mahomes is the guy. I still have him as the best quarterback in the NFL. But if I do not think that there's a wrong answer. I think it's either Burrow or Mahomes. And if you team with Burrow, then sure, I can see why that would make Cincinnati be your pick. Cincinnati seems to have this swagger about them whenever they play Kansas City, which is super important. You don't want to be afraid of your biggest competitor, and they certainly are not. So, I mean, you're talking about a coin flip game. I think Cincy's great, and I think Joe Burrow is great. I think they're going to be great for a long time.
9 of 11. Here's the key to this team, though. This offensive line, they went and bought it, right? They went and bought some players. They were really rough in the first 2 or 3 weeks. Burrow was sitting in that pocket with time to throw.
For some reason, the Bengals do this. They start off slow, and they kind of pick up steam. They did the same thing last year. So I don't know if it's a culture thing or if it's a scheme thing or if they got to learn I don't know. Or maybe there's some adjustments being made, but they did this exact same thing last year. And Colin is right. Earlier this year, we were talking about they can't protect Joe Burrow. And if they can't do that, they are cooked. Well, turns out they started protecting him. So whatever they changed works. They are keeping him up. And when you got a quarterback like that, who can keep you in games, and he's that good, you can go far.
And they're running the football. So this is the kind of team that can keep the ball away from Mahomes. That's why Buffalo doesn't scare Kansas City, because they bail on their run game. This team's got 2 running backs. This team's got an offensive line now that will eat the clock and has a star quarterback, Cincinnati, at number 2.
Number 1.
I think we have to give it to Philadelphia. There's a number here that's pretty amazing.
They're out of control. I mean, like, Philadelphia is just bananas nuts. I mean, they're so dominant. They're dominant in places you shouldn't be dominant. You know, like divisional road games, you know, stuff like that, where they're so far. They don't make mistakes. They score whenever they want to. 4th and 7, who cares? We'll just throw a touchdown. They do everything right. They smother you defensively. They're good. They're great running the ball. They're great throwing the ball. Their quarterback is elite. Their wide receivers are elite. Their offensive line's elite. Defensive line, cornerbacks. I mean, like, everything they do. Philly is either going to roll through the playoffs, or they're going to have one of those like shocking first or second round exits, I guess, for them, because they'll have a bye. But they have all the pieces. They have all the pieces of the best team in the NFL, but they haven't done it. And that is something in sports that is a big deal. You know, you'll see a team in the NBA where they're the highest scoring offense, the best defense, the 1 seed by 20 games, but they've never won a playoff series. You know, they've never advanced 2 series in a row. They've never got over that hump. And you start seeing that happen a lot in sports. And I think it could happen to Philly, where they have basically checked off every single box except going to the playoffs. You know, last year they got cooked by Tampa. Obviously, different team. Jalen Hurts is playing at a different level, but it is something you have to do before I can just turn around and be like, yeah, sure, they'll do it. You know, I don't know if they'll do it. Same with Buffalo. Like, until Buffalo beats Kansas City or Cincinnati in an AFC Championship game and goes to a Super Bowl, I'm not comfortable saying, like, yes, this team is for sure getting to the Super Bowl. The playoffs are different. They're different than the regular season. What happens when you're in the playoffs and you get down? What happens when you can't run? What happens when turnovers happen? We'll see. Philadelphia is, I mean, everything that they're hyped up to be, but they've got to do it in the playoffs.
They lead the NFL in 110 big plays. That's 11 more than, like, number 2. They've got 3 players on this team with 10-plus scrimmage touchdowns. I think I heard somebody else say this. May have been at this network, but I heard somebody say it this weekend. Anytime a team can beat you like 3 or 4 ways, they feel like a Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
They can beat you with defense.
For sure.
They can beat you with a rush. They can beat you on the ground. They can beat you in the air. They can beat you with a quarterback.
Unbelievable. I'm incredible.
Right.
I'm unbelievable.
I haven't seen it yet in the playoffs, but this is not a playoff herd hierarchy.
Damn.
This is a regular season herd hierarchy, and right now I have them at number 1.
Sometimes I even surprise myself, ladies and gentlemen. I really do surprise myself. God.